Walter Mcmillian was a black 46-year-old male, someone who was known in town for two things: having his own successful business and dating a white woman, which at the time was taboo. On November 1st, 1986, a young lady by the name of Rhonda Morrison, who was a white dry cleaning clerk, was shot dead in her shop from behind. At the time of the murder, Walter was at a church fish fry. After a few months with pressure building to find a suspect, the police put pressure on Ralph Myers, who was under investigation for another murder, to falsely confess. Due to the threat of getting the death sentence on a taped confession, Ralph accused Mr. McMillian by saying that he drove them to the dry cleaners. When they got there, Mr. McMillian was seen going in. After a few minutes, Ralph followed and saw Morrison shot dead and Walter robbing the place, standing over the dead body. After this, the jury had ignored 6 alibi witnesses who were black, who testified that he was at a church fish fry at the time of the crime. This trial lasted only a day and a half, and because of the popularity of the case in Monroe County, where the white population was at 60%, the trial was moved to Baldwin, where the white population is 86, which would most likely explain why there were 11 white jurors and only 1 was black. The jury found him guilty of the capital offenses charged in the indictment. Shortly after, the trial judge overrode the jury sentencing ruling for life and sentenced Mr. McMillian to death. After this criminally short trial, the founder of EJI, Equal Justice Initiative, Brian Stevenson, took on the case in post-conviction, where he showed that the state's witnesses had lied on the stand, and the prosecution had illegally suppressed exculpatory evidence. Mr. McMillian's conviction was overturned by the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals in 1993, and prosecutors agreed the case had been mishandled. Mr. McMillian was released in 1993 after spending 6 years on death row for a crime he did not commit.
One of the many issues with this particular case is that the 6 alibi witnesses were ignored. According to the book in Chapter 11, alibi witnesses are less likely to be believed by the jury due to a number of reasons, one of which is that the credibility of an alibi witness goes lower and lower with how close of a relationship to the accused they have. And since they go to the same church, the jury assumed they were close. Another reason they were not believed is that according to the book in Chapter 11, the jury and the police are likely to assume guilt if there are no emotional reactions to the situation from the suspects. Another part of this case that directly assisted the wrongful conviction is the clear and unadulterated racism shown by all parties during the trial. According to the case appeal in 1993, the judge on the case had intentionally practiced racial discrimination in the jury selection. Another way racism is a key factor to his conviction is, as Allpart wrote, human beings have an innate tendency to form groups of people that they feel they can relate to or belong to the most, and tend to dislike and even keep away from other groups or races. Like in this case, when the judge and district attorney purposely decided to exclude anyone they deemed not right for the job. There is also something that is covered in Chapter 13 of the book for a class called Aversive Racism. This is when white individuals are taught to believe that racism and discrimination are bad, so they are openly against it, but they're still aware of the negative stereotypes, and that gives them a feeling of uneasiness and distrust towards them. In this case, a black man who had 6 black alibi witnesses that had no reason to lie and were under oath were still not trusted and ignored. But the white state's witness, who is a career criminal and is accused of murder, they listen to. And they think it's enough on his word alone to convict this man to life in prison. Now, the 6 church-going black witnesses that were telling the truth, but the one white convicted murderer who lied to get off of death row. These are just a few reasons why this was a miscarriage of justice. Thank you for your time.